Audio on demand from Vision Christian Media.
You're listening to Momentum, a show that helps men succeed in life. And as we delve into this week's topic, a reminder that some of the content may be of a sensitive nature. Now, here's your host, Des Kennedy.
This is Momentum. You're with Tim and Des, and we've got a very special guest in the studio today. His name is Brian Andrew. Brian is from Live Happy Together. You can check out the website, livehappytogether.com.au. Brian's also a speaker and author, and his most recent book is called The Man Book, appropriately for this show, Des. And so, Brian, it's a real pleasure to have you here. Thanks for joining us.
Hey, thanks, Tim and Des. Glad to be here.
So, The Man Book, it says, play like a team and be happy together. Tell us a bit more about, I suppose, the motivation for writing the book in the first place.
I think the motivation really is just to help guys. A lot of guys these days haven't had good models of a dad, a lot of fatherlessness around. And I've worked with people at the coalface for so long. And I thought, guys need it short and, just straight to the point, no fluff. So when I wrote this book, I thought I've got to keep it short. It's got to be funny. It's got to show my failures. Otherwise, who wants to read a book where the guy's perfect, And so I included things like the world's first home-based fart protocol. I guaranteed the best sex a guy's ever had if they put into it's a pretty big offer.
Wow, that's a big call.
And so it's just short and it's like snappy and funny. And because I thought if guys don't like reading books, they especially don't like relationship books. And I think a guy, when it comes to relationship books, treats it like a root canal or maybe even a digital prostate examination, if I might put it that way.
I've never had one of those.
Google it, Des. And one of the funny things is when I'm presenting, sometimes I'll mention that there's a particular chapter on sex, and I'll say, now, this is a men's business book. Ladies are not allowed to read this book. And when they come up to the book table, the ladies always want this book. And then, not only that, they turn to that chapter.
Right.
And I thought, at least it's fun. Humor kind of almost tranquilizes the human spirit. It softens things. And I think it makes people more receptive to what matters, or truth, if you like.
I mean, you said you wanted to help guys out. So, I mean, in your experience, and it's been a number of years sitting in circles with guys in churches and that sort of thing, what would you say that the key issues for men, and I suppose when you look at where we are right now in the world, what are the key things that guys really struggle with, do you think?
Man, I think a lot of guys struggle with a sense of self, a good sense of self. Like, who am I? I know when I was in my mid to late teens, that was partly where I was at, why am I here? Who am I? I knew I was the son of Malcolm and Loris and the brother of 3 other guys and all that, and I was a chippy at the time and a surfer. Surfer was at the top. But I was so shy, and one of my cousins introduced me to beer, so I used to drink a lot in my teenage years to overcome shyness, to ask a girl to dance, and at a pub or wherever, a club. But, it didn't hit the spot, but it did help me be brave. But over the years, I think I've seen, I reckon what guys often lack more than anything is a clear sense of purpose. Like, I think if you can nail purpose, everything else kind of flows down from that. And you wake up each day with that sense of, I kind of know why I'm on the earth. And I found that changed my life. When I really, at 19, in a beach shack in Kaikoura, which is in the South Island of New Zealand, we were surfing for a weekend. After I began to nail that, my whole life changed. I didn't understand particularly what it meant to open my life to God, but I experienced a life change. I was like, man, I know why I'm here.
So how did it happen for you? What led to that, I guess?
I think a sense of uncertainty. I had a good family. And I didn't do drugs. Tempted to, but, alcohol was enough in those days. But I think it was a quest. Like, surely there's got to be more to life. I could see my life unfolding I was doing a building apprenticeship and I had an offer of a partnership, and I thought, man, I can see I'll get wealthy, I'll become a developer, but I thought that's not going to hit the spot. And I had a few surfy mates, and we were on a similar quest. One of them was called Ray Comfort, which a lot of people have heard of Ray. And, you know, he's now written 80 books. He's in the States. He's an amazing guy. But we were away for a weekend, and we would sit out the back. And when we were surfing off the east coast of the South Island, and we'd talk about things, and Ray would look at me and say, "What do you think about the Ten Commandments?" And I couldn't actually remember them, even though I was a church upbringing guy. I can remember one of them, you know, don't commit adultery. You know, that was I didn't remember any of the others.
So we're talking about this sense of purpose for guys, and for you that certainly came with a faith. But do you think then that a sense of identity is needed prior to that, or does the identity come out of the purpose?
My observation would be it comes out of purpose, because a lot of guys try to get an identity around their passion, like classic cars or some kind of hobby or sport or, you know, adventure, all of which can be great. But their identity then becomes as part of that particular tribe, which is not a bad thing in itself, but I think a lot of guys would say it's not enough. You know, isn't there something beyond that? And I think we're all pretty tribal. We always like being a part of a group.
Of course.
And so, I think the identity, in terms of the ultimate level of identity, comes after we get that sense of purpose.
So there will be men listening right now who really struggle with that. And there might even be, I dare say my age, and I say that because I'm 46, and up until recently, I've really struggled with going, who am I, accepting who I am. It's taken a long time for me to kind of figure that out. And even that's, you know, with a faith of 20 years now, 21 years. So there will be guys listening who go, I hear what you're saying, but I still feel like I'm a little child sometimes, or I still don't really feel like I've found that thing, or I'm not really sure who I am and what I'm meant to be doing. And my gosh, time is running out. I'm in my mid-40s. So for those people listening, what are your thoughts around that?
It's a very tough question. I'm meeting with a guy now, once a week, right now, just started, who's in his 50s, a successful business guy, who's really asking that, especially over recent months. So somehow he's come into my world. So we're meeting once a week to talk this through. And just listening to him, he's got no idea, really. Absolutely no idea. So, but he's interested. He felt he had a kind of spiritual experience that he can't define. And I said, it was kind of a little bit like magic, huh? You know, he said, yeah, because he just doesn't have, he said, oh, possibly a religious experience. And I said, well, what do you mean by religion? And of course, here's a guy who's never been to church, doesn't go to church. And he said, well, you know, he said, I went to church when I was a kid. And the rules, the regulations. And I said, you know, that's really, you're not talking to the right guy here. You know, I said, I would call myself a spiritual person, but not a religious person. And his eyes, you could see there was this, you know, an understanding. I didn't want to overwhelm him, but I said, have you heard of the term comparative religion? Nah. I said, well, that's where you line up all the great religions on the planet. And C.S. Lewis was asked, for example, what is the difference between Christianity and all the other religions? And he said, oh, that's easy. It's grace. So I was telling this guy around my table the other day, and I said, it's just, and of course he doesn't know what grace means. Who knows what grace is? I said, it's basically, you can't get to God through an 8-step process or a 3-step process. It just, God doesn't work like that. It's a gift. And he looked at me and he said, oh, okay. But I wouldn't say he had a light bulb moment, but I think it's a process because people just inherently feel they have to be good enough for God. We all do.
Yeah.
And it's like, no, that's not going to get us there. It doesn't work. And so it's a gift you have to unwrap.
Brian, you started by saying that one of the chapters is basically the greatest sex you'll ever have. So let's launch into that for a second because, you know, that should, if anyone's just fallen asleep over the last few seconds, they've probably just woken up and gone, okay, cool, count me in for that. So tell us, how do we reach that point?
Honestly, it's about giving, not taking. And I think,
Okay, hold on. We're just going to let that sink in for a moment.
Yes.
Hold on. Giving, not taking?
well, I think men generally are hardwired to take, and women generally are hardwired to give. And I think a woman will often keep giving in a relationship and then perhaps walk out. And the guy's mystified because he never understood that giving's a two-way street. And I think sexually speaking, I met and married my wife in 12 weeks. We lived in different cities. So we didn't have any pre-marriage talks and nothing much. It was like it was almost like a business deal with some romance put on the top, you know. And that's 44 years, ago. And we still like each other. And we still have great sex, if I may. That's a pretty bad thing for younger men to hear that. You mean your parents actually do that?
Still?
Yeah, but
after
if you've
40
been
odd years.
44
right?
years, mate, you're like my granddad. Don't even mention this topic, But I think it's about giving. And I think the core essence for a successful marriage is giving, like each giving. And that includes the bedroom.
You're listening to Momentum, the show that's helping men succeed in life. And today we're talking with Brian Andrew from Live Happy Together and also author of the book, The Man Book. I'm going to continue talking with Brian after this short break. Stay tuned.
You're listening to Momentum, a show that helps men succeed in life. Find out more at momentumaustralia.org.
If this program has highlighted something you'd like prayer for, we'd love to pray for you. Call 1-800-PRAY-FOR-ME. That's 1-800-772-936. It's a free call. Or text 0401 132 888.
You're listening to Momentum, a show that helps men succeed in life. Find out more at momentumaustralia.org.
Welcome back to Momentum with Tim and Dace. Today we're talking to Brian Andrew from Live Happy Together and also author of the book, The Man Book. And so far we've been discussing men's relationships, especially how to be a good husband. And there might be some men listening right now who are in that point with their wife going, yeah, but you this and it's your fault and it's that. I suppose we're saying let's drop the blame game. And for a man to take the initiative here and take responsibility as the man and the head of the home, in inverted commas, to go, you're going to step up and you're going to lead this.
Yeah, look, I think it does come back, of course, and it doesn't start in the bedroom. It starts with, I think, a sense of purpose, values harmony as much as possible, knowing what we're trying to achieve here. And I think sometimes when it's difficult, men forget that a woman is actually like a storehouse of sexual energy. She really does want to have sex. Mostly. There are various, I've met lots of people over the years and talked to people. Some people have a low sexual expectation. So I'm not denying that. And that's okay. And a guy has to, or the wife, because sometimes a wife might have a higher expectation. Some marriages often settle for a very low level of sexual because it's just too hard. And I think, having your sense of purpose, shared values, waking up every day with knowing where we're going and recognizing there's different seasons of life. There's whitewater rafting where you hit your head on a rock underneath. There's still parts of the river where it's easy. But I think there's different kinds of sex as well. There's creative sex. There's sex for comfort. And without wanting to give too much information, there can be quickie sex, that it's just mutual or one to the other, like, hey, let's just go for it. Just because it's a stress reliever, there's a multiplicity of angles. Always comes back to how she feels that you feel about her. Do you value her? Is it not just sex so you can get your own satisfaction? Is this a mutual exercise that brings us pleasure? And there are different seasons. But yeah, so I say to a lot of guys over the years, because I can think of a dinner around a table with a bunch of people and the guys were complaining they don't get enough of it. And we all know what they're talking about.
It seems to be fairly standard.
Yeah, well, and I said to these fellas, well, how do you speak to your wife during the day? And they're like, what the hell's that got to do with it? And I said, but if you're It was actually more colourful than that. But, and I said, no, but you've got to speak to her and be kind to her with your action. Speak nicely. Oh, what's the point? And I'm like, God. And the girls, the two ladies I can think of, the wives, were sitting there tearful, just tearful. And I thought, these fellas, they're not bad men, but they just didn't get it.
Tell me about, you mentioned about kindness and having that kindness relationship. Talk about that. How do men be kind to the partners and vice versa? How does that play out?
Well, I think one of the things I put is the world's first home-based fart protocol to, just give you permission to do that in certain parts, not certain. It's just a funny thing to get guys involved in reading the book and that. But flowing out of that, I think it's, what do? You think about her, you'll practically around the house, like some woman would say, when my husband cleaned out the oven, that was the biggest sexual turn on he's ever given me. Serious,
and he had no idea.
No. Wow. So I think, but kindness, it's practical. It's intensely practical. Picking up stuff, if you're a bit of a slob, that you leave lying around that she has to pick up all the time. It's doing the dishes. It's when we had 3 kids under 5, I remember thinking, that 5 o'clock time slot is really tough for my wife right now. Trying to get the kids bathed and ready for dinner and prepare for dad coming home. And this was in a more traditional environment where I went to work and she stayed home during those years. And I made a commitment to myself. I didn't tell her, but I'm going to get home at 5 o'clock every night for 12 months. And because I just knew that made a huge difference to her and sharing the load and everything.
I'm going to shift topic slightly. So let's talk about the P word. Pornography, because it's huge, it's everywhere, it's accessible so easily, and many guys are struggling with this today.
Yeah.
What's your experience? I'm not talking about your personal experience, but with those people that you speak to or your mentor, what's your feeling with regards to this? How impactful is it being in men's lives?
Huge. It's huge. It's I feel a bit sad when I start to think about it because I've seen the carnage for decades. I think it was over 30 years ago, perhaps the first guy asked to see me, married to a woman who was a model, and he wanted to come and talk about the fact that he would rather, can I use the M word on there? He would rather masturbate with a magazine than have sex with his wife.
Wow.
And I was just kind of starting out and helping people, and I remember looking at him and thought, his wife is every man's dream. She's a beautiful lady.
Yeah.
And a really, in many ways. And I think I was probably a little inadequate in my response at that stage. You have to learn a bit more yourself. But I'm sitting there thinking, why would you do that? And I came to understand over time that it's the fact that to have a good emotional connection with your spouse that leads to great sex is sometimes harder. Look, he wasn't a bad guy. She wasn't a bad person. But so it's just kept on coming at me over the decades. And I think, I never have any judgment, just never, because that doesn't help a guy. Guys often feel condemned themselves already. They feel bad about it. I can't say I'm an expert in this, and I would never say I am. When guys talk to me, I said, look, you need to do a course like Valiant Man that Alan Myers put together. In fact, that's probably the most effective one I've ever heard of. I've had some guys I know, I've recommended them to do that. And they said that's the most helpful thing. I've tried, but that course really helped set me free. But I think too, I say to guys sometimes, look, it's a bit like the toe-hold, foothold, stronghold. If you're dabbling in porn, it's not too hard to give it up. If you keep on going further, it becomes like a foothold, a little harder. If it becomes a stronghold, which is a full-on addiction, you got to have professional help. You got to have Alan Myers type course or professional help. And it's not something I would ever pretend to offer because it's beyond my pay grade, you know.
Well, look, we want to, again, encourage you. If you've been listening to this and it sparked something in you to pick up a phone, have a conversation with a mate, or go and find someone that you can have a conversation with, we would certainly encourage that. And find a safe space for you to air whatever is happening in your life right now behind the scenes that, again, you can find someone who's going to lovingly accept you, but lovingly challenge you on that process too, so that you can find freedom from whatever it is that you are battling with in your life. Our special guest today has been Brian Andrew. Brian Andrew from Live Happy Together. It's livehappytogether.com.au for the website. Brian's a speaker and author and been around the traps for many years, but one of his books, and the one that we're going to refer to, is The Man Book. Brian, an absolute pleasure chatting to you today. Thanks so much for coming in and sharing words of wisdom, advice, and just a bit of fun too.
Hey, thanks, Tim. Des.
You've been listening to Momentum, a show that helps men succeed in life. For more information or to hear this week's show again, go to momentumaustralia.org. You can also access a whole range of resources to help you on your journey and to get in touch with the team at momentumaustralia.org.